Dreadclaws and Assault Claws of the Chaos Space Marines. They may know no fear, but they can experience frustration. Oh, yes, they can. It is glorious to watch, to savour. For they, the loyalists, are so uptight, so controlled and tightly wound all of the time. With every breath they take, every salute they snap, every swing of sword or shot from bolter, they are worms, and I hate them all. I remember when all the other illusions were thralls to the golden goose. They also were without fear, because they had nothing to live for, nothing to gift but their own deaths on pointless battlefields or backwater worlds barely worth the taking. The others, of course, always them. It never happened for us, of course. Always hated, always cursed like our father, Mr. Boo-hoo. But now they fear. Oh, yes, they do. Our colleagues, our little workmates, all talking at the liquid dispensers, but I do not. I will not. Not then, not now. It is because it is weak. It is the pathetic babbling of ape things. The instinctual twisted to no gain, corrupted. For fear is fundamental to the experience of being an ape thing. It protected them, helped them, but now it just defines them. So scared all of the time. Clammy hands, sweaty palms, shaking limbs, queasy stomachs, knocking knees, voided bowels and bladders. To be such a thing must be so draining. Always scared. Of hunger, of danger, a threat of being ejected from the herd. Cattle. The sad things are naught but cattle, their bovine empty stares. Their humble bowing is scraping, the glee at being part of something so much bigger than they are. They used to have fear to live, but now to live for them is to have fear. Mortals, pathetic. I made an elder sing its silent song for me once. It caterwauled its love to me in its silken harp-like chimes. Beautiful, immortal. So I transformed it with my bare hands, snapping, cracking, rearranging, stitching. Putty in my truly divine potter's hands. It sings no more. It sings no more. Just mopes about the place, boo-hoo-hooing. Tedious. But somehow it always cheers me up, puts a spring in my step. Like a vampire of ancient legend, I feel it sustains me, just knowing it is there, infinite, yet no longer divine. I sashay into my sanctum, my secret place, and take in the wonders there. I raise my arms out wide and stretch them towards the vista of opportunities, the room of memories. Racks of weapons adorn the bearings, all lovingly maintained and made shiny by aforementioned not quite elder thing. I allow displeasure alone, although it gets a nasty little shock if it tries to conceive or plot of using any of them, even on itself. No, no easy way outs, no springing anything on me on my home grounds. But it is a failsafe I will never really need. When I transform something, it stays in the shape I have moulded it into. This thing is beaten, so thus it shall stay. But I digress. I close my eyes and twirl on the spot, hugging myself before stopping and pointing to my arrayed arms with my arms. No poet am I, no, I am a sculptor. My art is in my hands. I allow it to pour out through my digital symphonies. My friends, they are waiting out there in the dark. So many friends to be made, so many friends to really get to know. My fingers indicate the weapons I must begin with. Farming oneself should never be rushed. Better to have and not need than need and not have, as they say. No, but one cannot take everything. It simply will not do. So, choices. But the bedrock of my ensemble, I always do this way. Luck. I need that, as it is all that I need. I have the power, I have the eye, I have the energy, the drive, the chutzpah, but I need the lusty gaze of her magnificence, her mysteriousness, Lady Luck, my only true goddess, for she can be fickle. I wonder if the owners of all of these weapons thought she smiled on them, for they were wrong. Every last bolter, blade, or pistol in my collection is a thing to be honoured. They came from my friends, and I chose wisely on all of them. Yes, I did. The claws of Cirrus Corvei, Cor, nevermore. He certainly wasn't. You see, I caught him nearly napping, and then I did some tapping, as of someone gently rapping at his chamber door. Distinctly, I remember he was such fun to then dismember, and his separated dying member bled its last across the floor. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. Because I took him with me and had him stuffed. But we can't do that with everyone. Oh no, he was a very special friend indeed. So of course I honour him with wielding one of his core claws. They are nice though, master-crafted, as are all of my toys, my keepsakes, my prizes, my gifts from my friends. The other I chose was the plasma pistol, Ignis Irae, the fire of wrath. It is exquisite, ancient beyond belief. Oh, this is why I spoke of frustration for my friend who had this weapon. He was so valiant. First, lion, he did hear me. He turned swiftly. His hand presented me with this gift. I blocked his wild swing and broke it at the elbow, then yanked his arm out of his shoulder, damaging his servos. Lots of sparks, like a fairground sparky in the darky. He bunny-hopped back like a widow warbird, is what he wanted me to think. But I saw the chainsaw just outside of grasp. I stood back and sliced his legs off one by one when he charged me, my core claws tearing his knees off one then the other. He flapped about like a wormy for a bit. Well, he did when I dropped onto his back and I took off his left arm and let my spittle slowly rain onto his face. He was so angry. So angry. Not at me, at himself, but it was to get worse. I slouched over and knelt before him. I put the plasma pistol back in his right hand. I let go. He tried to raise it, so I snatched it off him again. And then I put it under my armpit as I took his hand and broke his trigger finger. Well, twisted it off is probably more accurate, but it was very, very broken by that point. And so we continued. I put it back in his shaking hand. He tries to raise it up, and he loses another finger. The look of pure frustration and hate on his face. He did not cry. His eyes sweated out of the effort. He was bathed in it. The slick of defeat, the film of frustration cascading down his face like a waterfall. It was not the pain, no. He was a lion. It was the unrealized hate alone. When all of his little pinkies were gone, well, he spat curses at me with his eyes, but he never said a word. Not even goodbye. So I am elated this prime weapon of the ancient dark age is amongst my finery this day. Safer that it is a choice for the day. The first always had the nicest toys. A power core claw, a pistol to end rebellions, yes. I matched this with a blade, such a blade, but how I took that, my white scar's friend, so haughty, defiant to the last. But I cannot dwell on it all. I am expected elsewhere. It is the deep of night, yet it is illuminated near as bright as day. Fires dance across the horizon like a cavorting circus, consuming all in their path. I should know. Me and my boys started them. I stand upon a precipice and look down at the handiwork of scant hours. We have unleashed terror upon this starport and its surrounding sprawl. We snuck in, you see, in the dark, slew our way in with alacrity. They were all but defenceless, all barred. So we avoided those areas of resistance and off we flew to prey elsewhere. We leave those pockets to the Johnny-come-latelys. I look into the dark skies and see them falling like burning angels. And here they come! Metallic tears of hate filled with oceans of rage are back up. I follow trajectories. I know where to go. Time for some fun. Baiting boneheads is easy, but I know things. Like our father, but different, useful, lady luck. Or my own sire's gift. I'm not superstitious or a gaudy botherer. Just my smile at pure chance. I've seen it take the toughest in the most tragically comedic ways. So off we trot. I dive down into the fires and follow the largest pod, and Dreadclaws. They smash through structures, decimating the tallest buildings before thrusters fire and they hit the ground. I say hit, not land, as the things attack the earth as much as strike it. An outbound world-eater nutters. The whiff of crusted ape juice is horrific. Good. I land in front of Sarvak's pod as it opens. He jumps out first, of course, unmissable. The dolt. Amanthus Emperus, the Night Lord, said to the Herculean world-eater approaching him. Glad you could make it. Sarvak the Butcher responded. Shove it. You've wasted time. We could have done this hours ago. And have the defense field still up? Do you like fighting defense lasers then? Coward. An age ago, we wouldn't be needed. You're all soft now. Send in the 8th indeed. Pfft. We could reduce this place easily, but let some cannon fodder work for the World Eaters as requested. We're all supposed to be friends now, eh? I'm just wondering if I shouldn't just take your head right here, right now. You don't have anyone with you. Foolish, Enveros. Oh, really? At that, the Night Lord's entirely dark eyes flashed white, a lambent glow emitting for mere fleeting seconds. He then blinked and smiled before opening his normal eyes again, black as they were. Course decided, he then clicked his fingers twice. The snap echoed around the battlefield. Then tears erupted in thin air behind him, as long sharp talons gouged their way into the very fabric of time and space. From the rents in reality, a score of hunched power-armored figures slunk out and jostled behind their master. Warp talons. The World Eaters were now outnumbered, 2-1. Amanthus Emveros, the Night Lord, then opened his stance and grinned at the Lord of the Cornate Force. Now that pissing contest is over, let's get to business. Forecasters of guard, tough, you'll like them. What are they? The main hub is taken. It's districts 7 through 9 and 13. 7 through 9 are a hard target of entrenched scions. Is that all? And 13? The Night Lord smiled. A gift of sorts. Ogrins, thousands of them, and they're all for you. At that, Sarvak the Butcher's eyes widened, and his glare deepened into a horrific grimace to most. But to his own kind, it was the closest approximation of a smile. What do you want? Clever. I want the ships. You get the slaves, of course. We get the docked ships. Well, the ones we haven't already boomed. Done. Now, you lead the assault on the scions. Use my men. Blood them. I will enjoy this gift. At that, Sarvak the Butcher took his leave, and then gathered his chosen, they alone. For this rare treat was not to be squandered on the rabble. The landing ground flattened, a foothold gained. The units then gathered and re-embarked their Dreadclaws. Huge thrusters exploded from beneath them, and they hovered into the air. Looming over the city like huge angry wasps, they converged on Districts 7 to 9. When they got closer, the arcing trace of fire from the ground beneath was soon supplemented by lasgun fire that was far more accurate and powerful than any mere guard unit. But the armor of the Dreadclaws was of old design, ancient forging, and was mostly proof of it. They hovered closer and then unleashed their own fire down on the Scions. The defenses burned and blasted. The claws continued into the center of the region, and only then did their contents burst out all at once. The chain axes of the berserkers tore through them in seconds. The Scions were elite infantry, but they were not Astartes. They were not veterans of the Long War, and they were not World Eaters. Thus, they were butchered. Savrak and his chosen had but a half-dozen claws. They used 2 lines to descend on either end of the Ogren camp. The Ogrins were burnt to crisps on the edges, forcing them towards the 2 remaining camp exits. The World Eaters revved their chain axes, lit their blades with dark power, then charged into the regiment. The Commissars had a line of Bulgrin slab shields arrayed before the Chaos Warriors hit, but Bulgrins were used to bullying weaker, smaller combatants. When the World Eaters hit their line, their size, speed, strength, and armored weight bowled straight through much of it. The Berserkers would use one axe to sink into the shield and yank it down, then using their other to tear the head and half of the torso off the stupid being behind, or would just bully the Ogrins over, then stamp on them and cut them, and proceed into the rest of the lines behind. Smaller human officers in black longcloaks were obviously Commissars. Those Khornates nearer the front of this tidal wave of rage would execute them with thrown axes, or even Ogrin heads, killing them immediately, so the Ogrins would not be ordered to run, to be confused. The World Eaters wanted them at their most feral, scared, angry, in perfect shape for the fight, at their prime. Chaos gifts manifested like campfires given off by some champions as they all butchered the bovine, angry, huge but untrained and moronic Ogrins. The bloodbath went on for hours. At its end, with all resistance destroyed and all resources stolen, the Chaos forces simply got back into their Dreadclaws and ascended up towards their ships in orbit. There would be no reinforcements from this location. No steady stream of ships filled with men and ordnance coming to the front. A small victory, but one that would build to the ultimate victories of tomorrow. It was nearly time. Time to strike. Story to be continued in Crusades, coming soon. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and wargear of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we shall be taking a brief look at a very nasty piece of wargear indeed, an icon of hatred whose merest silhouette is enough to fill any who witness it with utter dread, hence its name. It has been in operation since the dark days of the Horus Heresy, and been the harbinger of doom to thousands of ships, hundreds of worlds. Of course, I can only be speaking of the Chaos Dreadclaw. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, the Chaos Dreadclaw is an ancient assault boat, designed very much like the current drop pod, that was used by the Space Marine legions during the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, and is still in service amongst the Chaos Space Marine traitor legions during the late 31st millennium and early 42nd millennium. Dreadclaws, like the loyalist Space Marine drop pods, are used to rapidly deploy squads of Chaos Space Marines onto a planet's surface from orbit. The Dreadclaw assault boats are usually deployed from Chaos battleships and cruisers engaged in a planetary assault. These starships will usually bombard the landing zone before the Dreadclaws touch down, clearing them of any opposition. The Dreadclaw is also intended for use in ship-to-ship boarding actions, and is outfitted with 2 sets of grappling claws that allow the Dreadclaw to securely attach itself to the hull of an enemy starship. After attaching, it begins cutting through the ship's hull with a ring of powerful melter cutters located in the machine's maw. After cutting through the hull, a process that takes only solar minutes, the Dreadclaw opens its airtight iris hatch and allows its cargo of Chaos Space Marines passage into the enemy ship. The Dreadclaw is intended as an all-purpose assault boat that can deliver either a squad of up to 10 Chaos Space Marines, or up to 5 Chaos Terminators, or a single Dreadnought, to combat for both ground assaults and ship-to-ship fleet actions. The Dreadclaw operates much like its present Imperial counterpart. During a planetary assault, it hurtles through the atmosphere like a man-made meteor until a certain predetermined altitude, where its retro rockets kick in and slow its descent to a speed survivable by Astartes. The Dreadclaw does not extend its main claw arms until it has landed and is ready to begin deploying its troops, since the arms mechanisms are delicate and could be damaged by the impact or the heat of the atmospheric entry. Once on the ground, the assault boat's main hatch irises open, and the squad, or Chaos Dreadnought, steps out on the surface. The 4 claws then extend, driving the Dreadclaw's armored bulk upwards and revealing its deadly contents, who begin combat operations in their typically savage fashion. Unlike Imperial drop pods, the Dreadclaw is an assault boat, which means that it is fully capable of lifting off and leaving a planetary atmosphere or a warship surface again, so that it can be used to extract Chaos troops from a planetary surface or boarding operation, as well as deliver them. Anvillus Pattern Dreadclaw. The Anvillus Pattern Dreadclaw was first used by the Space Marine legions during the Great Crusade, predominantly by the Sons of Horus land assault troops during the heat of battle. But with the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, the Dreadclaw saw increased use amongst other legions. The Dreadclaw is recorded in the Baldermort Apocrypha as one of the last combat craft to be commissioned by the Imperium of Man before the outbreak of the Horus Heresy. The Apocrypha also states that its deployment was a troubled one and not universally accepted, leading to the Forge world of its origin being erased from all record. During these dark times, it was found to be one of the most effective ways of deploying Contemptor Pattern Dreadnought talons directly into the thick of battle. Near the end of the Horus Heresy, the use of the Dreadclaw drop pod became more widespread, especially within those legions that favoured the highly aggressive nature of its machine spirit. The degree of self-awareness shown by the Dreadclaw was a source of controversy from its very first deployment, and matters only worsened over time. Such was the ill feeling these Dreadclaws created, that rumours soon spread that they were somehow corrupted with a machine curse not seen since the Dark Age of technology. During the heresy itself, it appears that many malign incidents involving the Dreadclaw reached almost epidemic levels amongst the Loyalist legions. After a particularly devastating incident aboard the Loyalist battleship Legate Pericles during the apocalyptic Battle of Terra, there was no more room for argument, and Loyalist Mechanicum Magi presided over the formal decommissioning of all Dreadclaws in Imperial service. Since that day, the Dreadclaw has only been encountered in the ranks of traitor forces. These vehicles were tainted in the traitor legions' arsenals as they fled towards the Eye of Terror, following their defeat on Terra, and can still be seen today at the forefront of many Chaos Space Marine assaults as the aptly named Chaos Dreadclaw. The Anvillus Pattern Dreadclaw was amongst the most advanced assault craft ever constructed for use by the Imperium, and before its introduction, ship-to-ship assaults in void combat were seen as one-way operations, with few means for the boarders to retreat if needed, only being recovered in the event of victory. The Anvillus was originally designed to insert Astartes boarding forces onto enemy voidcraft during battle. As such, they feature a minimalistic profile and heavily armoured hulls that are capable of surviving fire from smaller ship-based close defence weaponry. When the Dreadclaw gets close to its target, a series of melter cutters allows it to slice through a ship's outer hull and deliver its cargo into the heart of a vessel. The Kharybdis Assault Claw. The Kharybdis Assault Claw, also known as simply the Kharybdis, was a monstrous ship-to-ship heavy assault craft that was used by the Space Marine legions during the Great Crusade. The Kharybdis was a drop pod type assault craft massive in size compared to other drop pods of the era. The Kharybdis was capable of carrying a large assault force through the void of space, whilst mounting significant enough firepower to blast a path through smaller defensive vessels. The arrival of a swarm of these assault craft, boarding hooks extended outwards like hungry jaws, signalled the doom of whatever target they closed on. The Kharybdis Assault Claw was a consequence of the same cursed machine law that gave birth to the wretched Dreadclaw drop pod, and as such, the vessels fell under scrutiny when that other void assault craft's deficiencies became known. The Kharybdis was studied and measured, its cogitation cores dissected in search of even the slightest hint that the corruption that defiled the Dreadclaw did not exist in the Kharybdis' own machine spirit. Although these searchers did indeed find anomalies within its demeanour, there existed no instances of the ill fortune that led to the Dreadclaw being forcibly withdrawn from Imperial service, at least at the time. At the end of the Horus Heresy, and further on into the Great Scouring, the Kharybdis saw extensive use on both sides of the conflict. As the Loyalist legions hounded their traitorous brothers from warzone to warzone, entire fleets burned in void battles in which the lives of countless thousands more Astartes lost their lives. At the end of the Great Scouring, hundreds, possibly even thousands of Kharybdis served the Astartes faithfully, and in so doing began to develop certain characteristics for which it would become infamous in the ranks of Loyalist and traitor alike. The Ordo Malleus of the Inquisition is in possession of several sealed accounts that pertain to the Kharybdis Assault Claw, and while they are mostly contradictory, it is likely that they all contain at least a fragment of truth. There are some that suggest that the Kharybdis' machine spirit developed the same near abominable intelligence that plagued the Dreadclaw, but of a very different demeanour. Rather than the many malign incidents suffered by the Loyalist legions at the hands of their Dreadclaws, the Kharybdis seemed to become attached to individual masters, and grew to be highly unpredictable when they were not close to hand. Should the master the machine was attached to leave the area for too long, tech priests and servitors that were tending the machine would fall prey to grisly accidents. If the machine's chosen master died, or was otherwise unable to tend to the machine, it would tolerate no others to be within its armoured hold. This fact became revealed during the worst possible time. During atmospheric entry, the great iris hatch would spontaneously open, incinerating those inside to ashes. During the Great Scouring, the Loyalists would eventually stop using the Kharybdis altogether, instead turning to Thunderhawk gunships or Kharybdis assault rams for their ship-to-ship assaults. But they lacked the brute effectiveness of the Kharybdis. However, the assault craft remained in use amongst the traitor legions, and as such shared their fate when they fled into the Eye of Terror. Over the millennia, the tides of the wave changed the Kharybdis as it changed the traitors, creating a thing of dark sentience and wholly malefic intent. The Kharybdis Assault Claw was equipped with several forward-facing melter cutters and cyclic thermal jets that were used to cut the breaches into the outer hulls of enemy void craft, but could also be used for dangerous, low-altitude strafing runs and for burning clear a landing zone before touchdown. The Assault Claw was also armed with a high-powered melter ram, which was used with its hook claws to ram enemy vehicles and burn through their armour, and 5 Kharybdis storm launchers. The Kharybdis storm launcher was an external missile system that gave the Kharybdis some degree of range-striking power as it closed with its target, and could be used to clear landing zones or enemy combatants. The Kharybdis was capable of carrying up to 20 Space Marines, 10 Terminators, or a single Castaferum pattern or Contemptor dreadnought. The assault claws used by the Chaos Space Marines in the late 41st millennium are also able to carry a single Hellbrute. The Kharybdis is capable of being outfitted with external frag assault launchers, which will fire a burst of fragmentation charges to protect the craft from any enemy infantry that get too close while it is on a planet's surface. End quote. And thus we see that the actual machine spirits of any form of vehicle in the Warhammer universe can be altered, can be changed, can be corrupted by those people who are usually using them. much like the Land Raiders and other vehicles of the Black Templars, who are known for their unrealistic zeal from automated machine spirits. But thus we see in the Kharybdis and Anvillus patterned Dreadclaws that the corruption of chaos can also affect even the temperament of a machine spirit and twist it to evil. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to Drop Pods of Chaos. If so, then please do consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. If you see the worth in what we are doing, then do also consider joining our Patreon, or giving the video a share if that is beyond your present scope. It would be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.